Chapter 5. Bones and Bloodsuckers. Waking up in the Bloodwater Inn was pleasant for the adventurers, those that continued to eat pastries. Those who refused their urges were met with gruesome nightmares. Getting downstairs and getting some breakfast, the group was greeted by Owen, the tavern owner. He informed them that their friends had gone to the church in town, St. Andrew's Church. Briefly, Owen introduced his two children, Brun, age 11, and Bray, age 9, and his wife Danica, who handled most of the cooking, while he manages the inn and cleaned the rooms. They also met his father. On their way out, he called down from atop the stairs for wine, to which Owen hurriedly called up. "You old raven, the wine is for paying customers only until the damned shipment shows up. Stores are running low. I told this twice, no." The group opted to make their way to the church, a much nicer building than the one in Barovia. Playing at some cruel jest, Edgar accosted yet another man of the cloth, and found him wanting. Asserting that some darkness had befallen the chapel, the father broke for salt for a moment, and pulled them aside. "How did you know?" the father asked. He explained that the building was no longer hallowed ground after their relic disappeared, the bones of St. Andrew, for whom the church was named, while the only people employed by the church were the father himself. A young man who worked as a groundskeeper by the name of Milivoje, and a young altar boy by the name of Jeska. Father Lucian forbade them from interrogating the boy, but offered to speak to Milivoje with them. The father explained he only told Jeska of the bones a few weeks ago, when he had become deeply afraid of what would happen if something happened to the town. Father Lucian told the boy of the bones, and how if anything ever happened to come to the church, he would be safe due to the blessing it bestowed on the grounds. He explained that the hallowed ground blessing prevented celestials, elementals, fiends and undead from entering the church itself. It also allowed the bodies of those buried on the grounds to eternally rest with no fear of being brought back by foul magic. Outside, Edgar grieves Milivoje, attempting to get him to admit to doing something with the bones, while failing to intimidate him. Two things are noticed. Father Lucian said only Jeska, the altar boy, knew the bones, but Milivoje seems to know what he is talking about, rather than insisting he didn't even know there were bones. He is also sweating profusely under questioning, and seems to be unable to meet Father Lucian's gaze, but insists he knows nothing of the bones being taken. Inside, Saka, Ian, Coley and Celine question the altar boy to the side. The only others in the church at the time are Irina and Ismark, the former praying to be free of Strahd's gaze, the latter praying to the morning Lord that this place offers the peace they could not get in Barovia. Saka lightly asked the boy about the bones and their fate. The boy insists he didn't even know they were gone, and begins to cry in fear. "I only told Milivoje when he tried to scare me about the monster coming to get me. I told him how Father Lucian told me I would be safe here because of the bones in the crypt below the church." They rushed out the doors of the church to share this morsel with Edgar. Together, with this new information, Milivoje cracked. He explained how he needed money to feed his sisters, and Henrik the coffin maker offered him a fine amount of gold for the bones. Milivoje had been digging a grave for service the next day, and Henrik had come to him to size up the hole and ensure the casket he was making would fit. He was the town coffin maker after all. When Henrik made some remark about the occupant of the coffin not staying in it long anyhow, Milivoje was quick to correct him, explaining the eternal rest and hallowed ground bestowed by the bones beneath the Morning Lord's house. The next day, Henrik asked Milivoje in secret to abscond with the bones, and bring to him at his shop, and he would reward the lad handsomely. Ashamed, Milivoje begged the father's forgiveness and apologized profusely for what he had done. Assuring Father Lucian that they would retrieve the bones, the group made their way into town. Outside the coffin maker's shop, they devised their plan. They knock on the door, and while waiting for a response, They see a large flock of ravens roosting along the rooftops nearby, seemingly watching them directly. With clothes dried an old man from inside. Sako explained they needed a coffin for his dearest mother, who just passed, and was told to come here by Father Lucian to obtain the box. 5 gold for entry, plus the price of the box. It is my off day after all. They agreed, and he opened the door, taking the 5 gold up front. Once inside the large wood shop, the carpenter introduced himself as Mr. van der Voort. While they could not be sure this was the same Henrik that they were seeking, they felt sure this must be the right man. Continuing the ruse, Sako explained he needed to look at some coffins and find one the right size, while Father Lucian prepared his dearest mum for burial. Taking them back into the corner of the showroom, he showed them caskets that would be better sized for a dragonborn. Allowing room for the tail meant the box needed to be deeper than usual. While this distraction was going on, Ian snuck away from the group and searched the building. Finding a stairwell to the upper floors, and nothing interesting but a workshop downstairs, he crept up to see what would be found there. Going left at the top of the stairs, he finds a small kitchen and dining area, along with a modest bedroom with amazingly built furniture. The man is a carpenter after all. In this room he finds a small panel at the back of the wardrobe, opening up to reveal a satchel, one filled with bones. Ian swears from the other side of the wall he heard a raspy voice call out for blood. Flying down the stairs, meaning to make an escape, Sweep is cussed by Sako on the coffin maker, up seeing him exit the door from upstairs. Edgar points out that they should leave now when they hear the voices of the damned from up the stairs, calling out to them about how hungry they are. Opting to end the threat here rather than flee, Ian and Cooley hear the sound of something rapping sharply upon the windows. Hopping to funnel them in the doorway, Celine stands defiant at the creature's approach. They flow like water down the stairs and along the walls and ceiling, 2 of them moving over Celine's head and taking slashes from her great sword for their trouble. The 3 in the stairs are flooded by radiant fire from Sako. Cooley, using his blood to imbue his crossbow with holy light, begins to pour bolts of righteous fury into the 4 vampire spawn. He knows if they can keep them bathed in holy radiance, they will be unable to regenerate. The 2 on the ceiling fall upon Edgar, who transforms into a towering bear. The fiends grasp and grab upon him, sinking claw and fang deep into his hide. Edgar calls down a beam of magical moonlight, which covers the 2 vampire spawn, assaulting him in yet more radiant light. Ian flits in and out of engagements, sinking his blade where he can find perches, trying to get at their vulnerable areas. After striking one of the fiends, Ian moves to open one of the shuttered windows. The tapping continues at the others, which are eventually opened, allowing small shafts of weak sunlight into the room. No sign of the one knocking at the window. Despite feeling like they were in a losing fight against these vampire spawn, once the first one was felled, turning into a cloud of bats and flying up the stairs and away, they knew the creatures could be felled, could be beaten. From the windows they were aided by someone armed with crossbows, firing bolts through the no-opened windows into the fiends. But the group was unable to discern who was aiding them. The tide turned slowly, one after the other, the group ragged and covered in wounds. Tracked down the vampire spawn, and then they chose to follow 3 who were able to flee up the stairs, in order to finish the job. Finding nothing but a room full of crates and boxes, they spied some that had raw earth spilling from inside of them, Edgar digging his hands in, so that he was correct. He thought they had looked familiar, and no, he was sure. Driving a stake into his former skate companion's chest, they let loose a damning howl. Traitor, it named him. The others quickly opened the other crates until they found the remaining 2 spawn, and slew them, driving stakes made from the various woods around the shop. Once reaching the 1st floor again, meaning to deal with Henrik, they found nothing but a letter addressed to Scamp. The letter was an invitation to dinner, under the promise that no harm would come to those who attended, signed by Stravon Zarovich. Returning the bounds to Father Lucian, he thanked them greatly, and offered to let them rest on the hallowed ground where they could be certain of their safety. He reminded them that if it was ever needed they would be welcome here in the house of the Morning Lord, who owed them a great debt. Edgar would finally explain what he remembered. It was not much, but he remembered that those were some of his companions who had come here with him. He was not sure if that was all of them, but he was sure they were companions of his at one point. Why he was here, and they were not, he could not answer. Medemeva's warning of the Amber Temple and the darkness within rang in Celine's head. Opting to check in on the toymaker's shop, they found the strangely cheerful Mendlinsky. He was giving a commission to a patron named Isaac. The doll he had made looked weirdly like Irene. Blinksy let them know that he worked as a bodyguard for the Watcher family, and had the dolls made every time he had a dream about his sister, whom he has been looking for since they were children.